All right, great to be back on a Monday. Looking forward, but obviously reflecting on last Saturday night. Really felt good as we walked off the field that night about how we performed. But I think coming in watching the film yesterday, like any game, there's things to correct. There's opportunities that we missed, opportunities that they missed. But ultimately, I thought our guys played, extremely hard, extremely physical. Played with emotion, but didn't let the emotion of whether it was the crowd, us having lost to them the year before, get us off a track at all. And that's not easy to do. And we built up a lead at halftime, and then we came out and that was as impressive as anything, being able to go right down the field and score again, and then defensively, really make it hard all the way till the very end when they scored. So, really pleased, with the outcome of the game, but more just the way the game played out, and now the challenge is to, bounce back, right back, and continue to look forward. And in saying that, Portland State got their first win this past weekend, and they're a very dangerous team. They were a team that did give us some fits last year. It was a 17-14 game at halftime. They certainly have one of the more explosive players in our league and probably in the country, and Dante Sachere at quarterback. He was 200 plus, accounted for 6 TDs against Idaho State last week. And they got really good skill, I think, led by Quincy Wright, who's a running back / receiver type. And I think they're making their way defensively at the same time. They have 2 games, Washington State and Boise, where they gave 126 points. So that's hard to recover from statistically, no matter what you do. But a lot of credit goes to Coach Barnum and that staff for keeping them together and going on the road, being down. I think Idaho State's an emerging team at the same time. So for them to pull that win out on Saturday is certainly impressive. So we're going to have our work cut out for us this week. I know on the injury front, we're hoping for good news on Danny, but we didn't get that. So Danny will be out for the remainder of the season, unfortunately. And I guess if you're going to go out, what a way to go out! That the play that he made, at the tail end of the half, and us being able to add points to that game, and how we played, up to this point this season was significant. So big shoes to fill there. Bryce Grebe has been gaining some traction, obviously, playing more and more as the season has gone along. So Bryce will have to step up, but ultimately it's probably Neil Daly more than anybody that his role will continue to grow. And Neil, I think, has himself continued to emerge, probably more on the practice field, but as he's gotten game opportunities as we've gone through the season. It was great to see Drew Polidor back. So I think we do move full force ahead with Drew. Thought he played really well in the opportunity that he got. Julius Davis, I think, is there, so we plan on taking him with this weekend, and see where that goes. And I know Justice Perkins is probably right around the corner, not this week, but he even had a helmet out there today, so making progress on that front. So with that, I'll open up for questions, wherever they are.
I was wondering if you had an update on Caden as well.
Oh, Caden is out for the season as well.
Okay.
So yeah, that was sometimes the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and when the news comes about. But yeah, we've had 3 weeks in a row with a starter suffering ACL, and that's where we're at right now. So really feel bad for those 3 individuals, Blake, Caden, and Danny, and really, those guys will all stay in it. They'll all stay, in their role within those rooms. In particular, Blake and Danny as seniors, and hate to see their seasons cut short though.
You mentioned Sachere. You've seen him and Craig in this offense before, but I guess what kind of stands out with Sachere so far this season, you think?
Well, he's just a tremendous athlete, and I think his ability to make quick decisions and make positive plays, the unscripted in his game is significant. In saying that, the unscripted is really hard to practice for. It's really hard to replicate in practice. And he's throwing the ball well, and they, beyond throwing the ball to Craig. I mean, they have 3 receivers that are more than dangerous. So they do a lot of the same things we do with Tommy as far as zone read, power read type plays. So getting him out in the perimeter is something that we got to account for. I know their 2 touchdowns in the first half were both him. They were both quarterback design runs where he got loose, and once he gets loose, he might be going the distance, and he did that a couple times on Saturday. And of both varieties, the run and he probably scrambled for more yards honestly on Saturday than the design run piece. So we got to be really disciplined, and you got to be able to stay in coverage because he does. He's going to make throws scramble wise too. It doesn't just turn into runs. So he's really going to test us, and test our scheme, test our ability to play within the scheme, test our ability to tackle. He was hard to tackle last year at times too.
Defensively, I guess anything that stands out about Florida State?
Well, they're multiple. I will say that I think pretty active front. Obviously you look at the numbers, it's not like they've lit the world on fire, but just 2 weeks ago against Davis, Davis was coming off their win against Idaho. Davis goes up there and they really defended Davis well. Ultimately it came down to that final play, but I thought on that day, they really took Davis's running game and made it hard. So Davis, had to throw it probably more than they'd want to. I think it was 50 plus times in that game, if I'm correct, and wasn't at a high rate either. So I thought that game defensively is the one that that they can play to a level they're capable of it. And I think Idaho State's offense is explosive. So for the numbers that they gave up Saturday, that's just the way it goes sometimes. So we got to be able to offensively go into an environment that we haven't been into in a few years. We played them last year, and they same coaches, so that's helpful. But we got to be able to back up what we've done to this point with another really good performance.
3 years ago, as you mentioned, that game was kind of obviously a slow start. There was talks about bringing your own energy. They had a tough quarterback at the time as well. So how much are you using that experience to go into this one?
Well, I think anytime you have enough guys on the team that are familiar with a setting, I think that's important, because it is a different setting than probably any other in our conference. I know we'll have a strong following, but those fans are on one side, they seem like they're further away than any place else you go. You're over there by yourself on that side, no stands, so it's just a different environment. And that day we played, it was a really hot day, and beyond the environment, I think the weather caught up with us a little bit that day. We won't have that, and I know it looks like it's going to be a decent day on Saturday. But no, I think the guys that have been there, I think need to share the environment. There were a lot of guys that played against them last year, so less on the familiarity side that's challenging than maybe talking in terms of Idaho State a couple weeks ago where no one had played down there. A lot had turned over since we played them.
How much have you guys looked at or even bringing up the Weber State losing and some of these kind of almost letdown games that you guys are now in a similar situation?
No, I think it was something that was a topic this morning, and Weber was a game that I certainly alluded to. Alabama 2 weeks ago, and you could go every week, whether it's in the FBS or the FCS. There's teams riding that wave, and 2 weeks ago Davis goes up there, and Davis should have lost. The way that the end of the game played out. And I'm not saying just the last play, but Portland State had a chance to put that away. So, like we've talked about, our consistency and our preparation needs to be determined by our ability to get better, not what the outside world perceives of a matchup or anything like that. And our guys have done a good job of that to this point, but this is another test in that regard.
Bobby Daly, what has he done? Anything specifically that he's done that has kind of been especially important to how the defense has played so far?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Our staff, Bobby and Sean leading the charge, I think we've gotten more creative on third down. We've been able to present different looks and leverage our strengths week in, week out. And I think beyond that, I think going back to January, making the change that we did, returning 4 coaches, adding Jody to the mix, I think it's been a really galvanized group since then. And that's a credit to the relationships that Bobby and Sean, Bap, Nick John Baptiste, and Brian Shepard have all built with those players. Because anytime you change, it's not the most comfortable thing for a player, whether the outside world thinks it is or not. So, those guys, I think right from the beginning in January, really, again, brought this group together. Adding Jody, I think Jody's been a real asset for a lot of reasons. And we've played really hard. We've played, very consistent. It's not that we haven't had our flaws, but we've overcome those. And really, that first group, I don't know exactly what our numbers would be, but they would be pretty significant as far as playing the defense we want to play. Wherever we're at 16 points per game, and I just looking at the quarters, what we've been able to do in first halves of games has been, what you want.
And in that game, you mentioned stopping the run. How much of that is just the winning kind of line of scrimmage, and what kind of maybe schematically was really effective as well?
Yeah, I think it's winning line of scrimmage, not getting knocked back, I guess, and then guys being where they were supposed to. The 4th and 2, they ran the same consecutive play 2 times in a row. It was a 3rd and 3 that got to a 4th and 1. So obviously they got 2 yards the time before. We had a couple guys win their one-on-ones on that 4th down. Idaho counts on being able to get some gadgets home. Their reverse, it was a loss of yards for them. So just plays like that, and I thought we tackled really well. And getting a guy like Drew back, and Drew can do things probably that other guys on our team can't. So like even his first play, him running the alley and making that tackle for a loss or right at the line of scrimmage, significant. So I think those plays against the run were all kinds, but it was guys doing their job at a really high rate, and we made them more one-dimensional than they would like to be. And anytime you can do that, whatever that dimension might be, you're on the right track.
You mentioned Drew right there, but just him being able to kind of step in and make an immediate impact, I guess how big is that for this defense?
Well, the timing with Caden going down, I think was significant. Obviously, we weren't counting on that. Caden's position flexibility would have presented some other opportunities for us, but that's not the world we lived in. So, Drew being able to go out there, and we were conscious of there being maybe some rust for him. But again, I would imagine that first play did so much for him. Having that opportunity for him, and that's probably his calling card right there. Being able to cover that ground, have a ball carrier going lateral, and being able to knock it down. So, that was a good springboard for him. And it's not to say, I think we still feel really good where Taki's at as well. So, the continued development of that group while we've had 3 injuries between Brock Steele, Blake Stillwell now, and Caden. That depth that we talked a lot about at the beginning of the season, thankful we had that, and have continued to build it.
Yeah, I guess how much did injuries dictate his timeline? I guess was Idaho always maybe a time for Drew to come back, or I guess what that was?
Yeah, I think it was always a reasonable mark for him, and I think I mentioned it here. He'd been practicing and building up for really 3 weeks, and that's step by step. That's going from individual to then doing some 7-on-7, and then to mixing into some team drills probably 2 weeks ago, and then last week being able to go full steam ahead. So I think this was the earliest possible time he could have played, and his play wasn't forced because of any injury. So
one of the Portland native area guys, Miles Jackson, how thankful I guess to have him be in that nickel spot with Caden out, and just how would you say he's played overall this season?
Yeah, I think Miles continues to do the things we ask him to. I think in particular now, his role does get dialed in. It's not a role that and we're looking to split. I know Tayden has done a good job of I think emerging as a bona fide backup, but Miles is in there, and we need him to play well, and I think he's done that. He's a really smart young man, and so his concept of what we're doing at that position way different than last year. Last year he went from a starting corner to being an injured corner. All of a sudden he was a starting nickel, and that was a work in progress last year. But thankfully, I guess we have that experience to build off from last year, and he's a guy that throughout his career, to me, I think he practiced in one spot in the spring, and then we move him in the fall. Well, we didn't do that this go around, so he's had all these bank reps going back to when we made that switch with him last year, and he's just continued to get better.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, hey, Coach. Thanks for taking a minute.
Yep.
You're going to get some really good guys back. You've lost a couple really good guys. I guess that's sort of just a testament to the balance and depth of your team, though, right?
Yeah, and I think it's having guys get injured. It sucks, but it's the nature of it. And then the true test of your program, I suppose, and your particular team and this 24 team is how can we withstand that? Can the next guy that goes in there play with the level of confidence and then execution that we need, so we don't have a drop off? Continuing, on either side of the ball, to be as thoughtful and creative as we can to extend our depth. We have a number of guys that have position flexibility on both sides of the football, and continuing to have those discussions about what does that mean, and that's even in talking linebacker wise. Okay, Neil Daly, does he have the flexibility to play both spots? And thankfully, we feel like he does. He's been practicing at both of them, both the Mike and the wheel, because there's differences to what we ask those two positions to do. So, because Danny was really that guy that was the flex guy for us and to this point. So, to your point, it's part of it. It is great to have a guy like Drew, who is a high caliber player coming back, ultimately getting Julius back, high caliber player. When we do get Justice back, it is unusual that we have three guys of, that are at minimum all conference type of guys, if not more, to be able to come back mid-season. So thankful we have that opportunity, that this isn't a season lost for any of them, and excited to get them them all back ultimately.
I know this maybe is a logistical question, but the guys that are hurt that are out for the year, do you still travel them? And if so, how big of an impact can they make just coaching guys up on the sidelines and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case basis. And typically we don't have a hard travel limit in the conference necessarily, but there's budgets and such that do limit you. So yeah, if we feel like a guy can bring value in particular, I have a position coach that would come and say, hey, if so and so can be there on the trip, here's what he can do for us. Then I think it's a consideration, and we have done that some in the past. I know for a guy like Julius on his way back, again, I think taking him on this trip as he's his readiness is getting there, I think that's logical. We'll see with Justice where he gets, but yeah, I think those seniors, those leaders, to have their presence, I think it's important at times.
Paul Brown talked Saturday about Blake Schmidt being like his number one coach on the sidelines and telling him what he's doing well, telling him what he's maybe not bringing it. You probably expect Danny to probably fill a similar role now, just because he is such a motivational.
Yeah. I think Danny, of all our seniors, is the most vocal, and certainly I think would be the one on the defensive side, in part playing the linebacker position, but that would be that on the field too. So that being said, McCade will have to step up, not defer to anyone else at this point. But yeah, I suspect Blake, Danny, their investment is going to continue to be significant. And the guys that are replacing them, and also just to our team. They spent a lot of time in here, and what I don't want is that injury to be the end of it for them, because there's a lot more that they can give, and I hope there's a lot more they can get as this season continues.
You talked about Sashere's improvisational abilities and his athleticism. Coach Barney seems like he likes to draw some stuff up too that maybe is unorthodox. He's always been so good with all the formations. So how complex, or how complicated is it?
Yeah. So they're a game behind us as far as games in. Well, they're actually 2, right? Because they didn't play the 1 game. So I think you certainly look at what you have there, but we got to go back in the archives a little bit too. So each and every year you play them, that list of whether it's tricks, gadgets, formations, that piles up. And all that being said, the creativity to see something new, I think is definitely a possibility, and then you got to be mindful of the timing. What has been the timing of their tricks and gadgets and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, those plays for them are plays. They're not necessarily just tricks. I think they're well schemed up plays that within the course of the game they're going to find a place from. I know last year there was a double pass that we defended really well. And so it's going to pop up at some point, and our guys, they really test your discipline in all ways, whether it's how the quarterback plays or how far the scheme can get extended.
I know Coach Barnum was really high on his fronts when I talked to him this summer, especially the defensive side. Do you see that show up on the field?
Yeah, I think that's one area as we've played them twice in my 3 years previous, that's where they jump out at you right away. They like most teams, they play a bunch of guys, but they have some real active, different types of bodies in there. I think their linebackers are fast the ball, tackle well. They found ways to put pressure on. They found ways to again just show a different picture throughout a game. You go through a game, they're not going to line up the same way all too often. Their presentation is going to be different. So, yeah, I would think defensively it has, not only this year, but through my time here, been where it started for him or started for them, I guess. And, it's certainly no different this year.
Number 9, the Montgomery kid, he seems like one of the best guys I've seen. Does he stick out to you when you watch them?
Yeah, no question. And they're just really, active is the word I would use for the front 7 just in general. Their numbers aren't great, and that's a product of those 2 games in particular. But I look at the last couple weeks, they've continued to get better. I know maybe different than this time last year, their health is in a different place. I know that really wore at them, and that was after we played them last year. They became a different team in that back half of the season. Well, they're to the midpoint or thereabouts, and they seem to be a lot healthier team. They're probably just a deeper team in general this year. So I think we're seeing a team that's getting better. Where that at this point in time last year, that maybe wasn't the case because of all that had gone on injury-wise for them. So we're gonna get everything they got. I'm certain of that.
Do a little something on Paul Broth. Seems like he's playing really, really well. So where have you seen him grow, just physically and mentally?
Yeah, I think it's both. He was a pretty raw guy, so he was new when we got here that first summer into the fall, and he had to develop. And in that front for us, he is the model of what you want in a developmental guy, meaning he's got a frame, he's got to want to, and Paul has had that. I think having his brothers precede him here, I think was a big part of it, believing in himself. But he's gotten so much better, even athletically, as he's gotten bigger and stronger. And I think the mental side is he's matured quite a bit in these 3+ years. And it's his attention to detail, both on and off the field. That growth has been significant. So he's gone from a guy even last year. He missed a bunch of time, but he was a wild card. He'd make a flash, and then he'd do something that was kind of beyond the coaching, whether it was backdooring or whatever. you know, and he's much more dialed in, I think, to the point where you look at him and he can be a real force. He can be a real disruptor on the inside. And obviously we ask those inside guys to do a lot of dirty work, a lot of unsung work, but he's a guy that, you know, I think we feel like can make plays. And, you know, with Blake being out, you know, my anticipation that he's really taken on a leadership role too, as a, you know, as a guy that's been in the program, you know, as distinct knowledge of this program going on beyond his 4 years he's played, and you know, competitive guy that this team and this program means so much to him.
Thank you.
Anything else in the room?